What's up guys, it's Casey from Freefall Data Systems, and I'd like to introduce you to our new series, Thoughts on Altitude Awareness. In this first episode, I'd like to concentrate on the tools we use to develop, maintain, and ensure altitude awareness. As food for thought, I'd like to divide altimeters into 3 categories based on their method of indication of altitude. The development of altitude awareness can't come without experience, and it would be foolish to approach the problem without tools designed to tackle the issue. I find a lot of times when people talk about skydiving altimeters that there isn't a lot of clarity about exactly what the most important differences are between the different types. Understanding these differences can enable you to make a better choice about what gear to use for a particular skydive. To simplify things, and for conceptualization, I like to group the altimeters into 3 different types based on their method of indication. You'll notice in certain cases that some devices might fit into more than one of these categories, and as a manufacturer of altimeters, I find these overlaps extremely interesting. So what do we got? We've got numeric indicators, audio indicators, and light indicators. Numeric indicators are the oldest type of indicator, and they take various forms. Analog dial indicators or digital displays, but their purpose is all the same, to give us a number that represents our altitude above the ground. The greatest advantage of the numeric altimeter is the precision of the indication of altitude as a number. There isn't any greater precision in terms of indication of altitude from an altimeter. At the same time, however, when we're dealing with mental or cognitive precision, we're also dealing with a latency or delay of how long that information takes to register. Numbers take time and effort to read, and this is one inherent disadvantage of this type of altimeter. However, perhaps the greatest disadvantage of this type of altimeter has nothing to do with this. It has to do with the fact that you have no information from it when you're not looking at it, and this is the reason the audible altimeter was developed. The audible altimeter revolutionized skydiving altitude awareness in the 1970s and 80s. As people made larger and larger formation jumps, it became easier and easier to lose altitude awareness. Many distractions can occur on a skydive. The audible altimeter provided a huge advancement for skydivers in terms of altitude awareness because suddenly there was something that could override distractions, something that could provide a jolt when it's time to get it together and act. This is still the greatest advantage of the audible altimeter, and it's one of the greatest devices ever created for skydiving altitude awareness. The advantage is huge. In such a visually and perceptually distracting sport in general, the audible can bring one back to concentration to focus on that which is most critical to our safety, our altitude above ground. Audible altimeters do, however, have their Achilles heel, as does any altimeter. Audibles rely, to a certain extent, on the effect of surprising the user to gain their attention. This disregards the fact that a numeric indicator knows, so to speak, that we are constantly falling. The numeric indicator is constant, whereas the audible is not in any sense. Even if you have a device such as the N3A that Alti2 produced, which is a device that basically read off altitudes as you fell, which is an interesting idea indeed. Another type of indicator system, such as color alti, is placed in the skydiver's peripheral vision. This has the advantage that it can, depending on its placement, always be present to indicate altitude. None of these other systems we've talked about have this ability to constantly be present to indicate altitude. If an audible were to be configured in this way, which is theoretically possible, you'd have constant audio input all the way down, which would be very loud and, as most skydivers know, quite annoying. And, as I mentioned, the audible relies to a certain extent on the effect of surprising the user. In a similar manner, light indicators can use flashing, sparkling, and abrupt shifts in color to indicate important altitude thresholds being crossed. People get used to the sounds of their audible altimeters or the looks of their wrist-mounted altimeters or their lights as well. For the best results, all of these tools need to be taken together and practiced to develop good altitude awareness. And certain types of altimeters are more appropriate for certain types of skydives. Each of these altimeter categories has capabilities that the others do not. And remember that the best and most important altimeter is your mind. and that its capabilities can be enhanced and refined through the types of tools that we talked about here. Now, this series of videos isn't only about my thoughts on altitude awareness, so I want to encourage you to share this video and post your thoughts. Also, follow us on Facebook or Instagram to stay in the loop.